If you're planning to become a home buyer after July of this year, you will hate to be a home buyer in this kind of environment. The recent National Association of Realtors settlement is going to negatively affect the pockets of many home buyers out there.
The National Association of Realtors has agreed to pay $418 million in damages to settle class action antitrust lawsuits over broker commissions.
So this recent settlement with the National Association of Realtors starts as July of this year. It is going to change the compensation realtors receive forever, making each party in the sale of a home responsible for their own representation and compensation. This may sound as a great opportunity for sellers, especially in the seller's market environment where we have been, where a house sells for more money, multiple offers. But it's definitely going to cost a heck of a lot of money to home buyers out there. And let's be honest, they kind of like right now been playing the victims because they have been having to pay more money that they feel comfortable to buy a house, especially in the last 2 years. But in reality, the real estate industry has been working well. It is not perfect, but it has been working well. So why all of a sudden we have this recent urgent need to change the industry? You see, the recent lawsuit that we have right now that is called Moral at All versus the National Association of Realtors that was filed in the state of Illinois has the following provisions because this is a litigation damage class. The provision number 1, it says that you have to have sold the property between March 6, 2015 and December 31st, 2020. The second one, it says that you use a real estate agent or broker affiliated with a corporate defendant to sell a home. 3, that you paid a commission to the real estate agent or a broker. And 4, that the house was listed in what is called a covered multiple listing service or MLS. A month later, the C. Burnett lawsuit was filed. So you see, and then have been so many copycats of those lawsuits after the fact. And a lot of these lawsuits basically says that the real estate industry players, including the National Association of Realtors, as well as the big national firms, got into a kind of compadre, colluded artificially to inflate the commission rates. The lawsuit takes aims directly to the National Association of Realtors participation rule, which requires that listing brokers make a blanket offer of compensation to real estate agents in order to list their property in the MLS system. So me as a realtor, I see a house listed on 123 Main Street, I see who is the listing agent, and I see the compensation that's being offered by the listing agent inside the MLS. So far that it has been the only way a listing agent can actually tell me how a compensation will be paid if I bring a client. Now, if we move forward to March of 2024, the National Association of Realtors settled those lawsuits once and for all to a crazy amount of money of $418 million. Yeah, you heard one, $418 million. So what is the biggest change? Now what it does is basically it takes that 6% commission that you have been seeing over the headlines in the news recently. It just makes a big change to that. So basically what it means now to the seller is that he or she or they are no longer required to have to pay a buyer agent commission. They only have to pay the seller side of the listing agent side. So as I stated early, this is great savings. This is really good for the sellers. There's no question about that. But in reality, it's not a good thing for buyers because now buyers need to have a signed agreement in which details out the compensation their agent will be receiving and not necessarily may come from the seller as it has been the normal. But some of these sellers and the plaintiff said that they didn't know that their commissions can be negotiable. They thought their commissions are just the way there is a fixed number. It is not true. Commissions are always negotiable. Some sellers may choose to negotiate. Some other sellers may not. It was up to them to make a decision if they wanted to negotiate something or not. And of course, if before that 6% on the headlines, it was kind of like the normal, now a seller only has to pay 3%. There are companies that charge 5%, that now can be 2.5%. There are some other ones that charge 4%. Now it's going to be 2%. Only what there is the seller obligation, because they no longer have to offer something out. And of course, there's always those companies that are discount brokers that charge 1% of less to put a listing in the system for you. The reality in this market that we are, that is really not every agent it's making 6%. It's very difficult nowadays because it's a seller's market. Houses sell super fast, so skilled agents with a lot of experience may get that percentage, but new agents are most likely settling for something 5% or less. So the traditional way how it works is you call me as your listing agent. I'm in the state of Maryland. By the way, in the state of Maryland, I can only represent the seller, not the buyer. And then we agree on a number. I'm going to use 5% in this case. I agree to that 5%. So what I do in return is I will collect 2.5% of that 5%, and I'm going to offer out the other half, or 2.5% out, to a buyer agent that brings me a well-qualified buyer that can take your transaction to the finish line. But this has not always been the case. Many years ago, buyers did not have representation. And buyer representation picked up some momentum in the late 1980s and early 1990s. But before, the way this worked was that a buyer will start looking, and remember, back then we didn't have internet as much as we have right now. So a buyer will start looking for homes that he or she or they wanted to buy in a specific neighborhood. Then they will go ahead and call the listing agent that was advertising that property, and then they will set up an appointment. The listing agent will come, open the door, and show the house, with the understanding that this person was only representing the seller, not the buyer. You see, you get me now? So that was a big problem back then. Why was a big problem? Because anything that the buyers wanted to share with the listing agent had an obligation to share that with the seller, the client, because the listing agent had a fiduciary responsibility to the seller, you see? So buyers felt like it was a huge disadvantage because there were certain things that they wish the listing agent did not share with the seller. You see, in this scenario, when there is no buyer agent, the listing agent represents the seller and the seller is the client. A buyer agent without representation, it's a customer to the listing agent. I know, very confusing, but that's the way it is. Because of fiduciary responsibility, the agent could not advise, could assist, very different, but not completely advise a buyer of how much they should make an offer for and what other terms they should be included or removed from the offer that we're making. So because that all those things and disadvantages, then there was a new rule in place, as I said, late 1980s, early 1990s, so where the buyers have representation, and that felt it was a fair treatment to all the parties involved. Seller had their own representation, buyer now they have their own representation. So right now, under the current model, if you are a buyer, you want to have an agent, the buyer agent and the buyers have to come to an agreement on how much they want to get paid. And that what happens is then that whatever commission is offered in the MLS, that's how a buyer agent gets paid. So right now, the only way I know how much a seller is willing to pay for me to bring a buyer is going to the MLS and see what commission is being offered. That starting in July, it's going to change. No longer going to be the case. Don't know exactly how it's going to work out. We're still learning as we go, but that's not going to be the case. Under the new settlement, let me give you an example how things are going to work out. Okay, so let's say you're buying a house for $400,000. Now, under the proposed settlement, a buyer will then have to pay the buyer's agent commission. So let's use some examples. So if this is a $400,000 property that is being sold and the seller is not collaborating, is not paying a commission to the buyer agent, then the buyer will have to come with money out of pocket. So let's use a 2.5% example under this rule. So you're probably talking close to $10,000 right now. And that is a lot of money for a buyer to have to come out of pocket to be taken from their down payment or closing cost to work with a buyer agent and have proper representation. Another potential model that can arise from all this thing can be a flat fee model in which an agent gets paid a flat fee to go out there and find a property or help a buyer negotiate a property, that may be probably a good solution. But here's the thing, what are you going to obtain for the flat fee? It still remains a big question mark. We don't know how that's going to work out. The flat fee only covers, showings, just 10 houses. For example, right now, if I work with someone that wants to start looking for properties, whether it takes one house or 20 houses between showings, making offers, pre-inspections, and all those things. So if it takes me 20 houses to find the perfect house to this client, and when I start taking, meaning I go and show them, I get paid that percentage. Now, if you are working on the flat fee model, does it really mean that this will cover 20 houses, or is this flat fee only for 5 homes or 10 homes? Or then you have to buy credits if you want to see more homes. You see, all of a sudden it's starting to potentially get expensive. Now, buyers also have the potential to go and work with an attorney, but let's be honest, around here in my area, Montgomery County, a good attorney will probably be charging between $300 to $500 an hour to start just doing the legal paperwork. And remember, they're not going to be showing you houses. They're not going to be taking you out there to do those things. So who are you going to rely for somebody to open the doors to you, to show you the properties, to tell you the up and downs of the property, the problems, the neighborhood, the schools, a lot of those things that attorneys won't do because liability or lack of experience, however you want to put it. Now, is this where the concept of an Uber person can now do those things and open doors for you? Could potentially be something like that. But remember, you get what you pay for, right? At the end of the day, that's what happens. So either way you want to see it, this is definitely going to create a lot of issues for the industry that, as I said, it is not perfect, but at least it's been working well. So the bigger questions everybody has is, so what our buyers are going to do now? It's the flat fee model, the one they can use and work with, or the percentage that the buyer now has to come out of pocket. It's the seller going to be the one that maybe a buyer can come and ask the seller to pay some closing costs, and part of the closing cost now is going to go towards the payment of the buyer's agent commission compensation? Or is it that the lenders are going to allow some of buyers to borrow more so they can cover the cost of having a buyer's agent? From whatever angle you want to see it, it's very complicated to come up with an answer that can give the best solution to the customers, to the clients out there, to the buyers that are really looking to buy. So this can potentially make it more difficult, especially from affordability perspective, to a lot of people to want to buy a house. First-time home buyers, maybe some minorities, people with fixed incomes. You just put it this way. I think the model that we have right now has been working well, and I'll tell you why I think it works well. Because when you buy a house, the seller gives you a favor to pay the commission for the buyer agent, and eventually you become a seller. And when you become a seller, you pay the favor that other person gave you when you bought the purchase. I think it evens out at the end of the day. Now, one of the biggest challenges the industry is going to have to go is the skills that some of these agents have in order to convince people to work with them. A lot of, the real estate industry doesn't have the entry level, it's very low. So anybody virtually can become a real estate agent and do this as a side gig if they want to. I'm serious, you can do those things, but it doesn't really give you the exposure that you really need to have in terms of experience. The only way you can gain experience is when you close a lot of real estate transactions so that you can advise and coach sellers and buyers alike on what they can do moving forward. So I know I came and talked a lot about these things today. I hope you find this video super valuable. Do me a huge favor. When you are finishing watching this, give it a big like and smash that subscribe button so that you can get more information just like this. I'm Robert Garcia, a member of the Capital Crest Group of Long and Foster, licensed in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. If you're thinking about making a move to this area, you would want to have a conversation, a free time with me, go ahead and click on the calendar, write the link below, and we can set up a time. If you're thinking you live currently in the area and you're thinking about making a move, do the same thing, and I promise you won't be disappointed. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.